What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, in the past, we've talked about what the Lions can do as an organization to go from worst to first in the NFC North. Go from the bottom dweller of the division to the division champs, making the playoffs and making some noise in the NFC. However, it's not always a bad option to look at the competition we have in the NFC and kind of see what's going on in each other division. In the NFC North, obviously, that would be the Bears, the Packers, and the Vikings, and kind of see what they got going on, see who the new guys are, who they lost, and really what the news stories are coming out of there to see how competitive and how well they're doing. Now, looking at that, I realized that the Detroit Lions are really the only team in the North right now that don't have a huge controversy off the field, don't have a holdouts going on, they don't have any real distractions that should hold them back, and the rest of the NFC North really does. Now, before we start talking about this video is going to be more talking about the other three teams in the North that are not named the Detroit Lions. So if you're looking for a Detroit Lions video, that's really not what this is going to be today. The rest of the channel is talking about the Lions, and we're going to do a ton of that, for the rest of this channel as far as it goes on. And I really wanted to take a close look at the division rivals today and kind of see how they stack up. If you're looking for a Lions video, that's not what this is going to be, but there are tons of other videos on the channel that you can go watch to get your Lions fix for the day. Now, if you are new to the channel and are enjoying the content, consider liking the videos, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with a Lions or an NFL fan that you think would enjoy this type of content. But with that being said, let's get into talking about our NFC rivals. Now, as I said, the Detroit Lions are really the only team without an off-the-field controversy or holdout in the North right now. And that can be very detrimental. Last year, we had two holdouts in training camp, being Snacks and Darius Slay. They both came back by week 1, but Snacks really wasn't the same player he was. And I don't know how much that had to do with that holdout, or how much it just had to do with he's getting older. He's not quite the same. He's not quite at the same level he was, just based on age and athleticism. All that's kind of just starting to decrease. I don't know how that really, factors out. I don't know how that evens out as far as just he's getting older and less athletic, and he held out and really wasn't with the team for a majority of the offseason. But he had a statistically worse year than in 2018. You could just see by his play that he was not the same guy that helped lead our defense to a top 10 level 2 years ago in 2018. And Darius Slay, while having an okay year, obviously still being our best cornerback on the defensive side, really wasn't the Darius Slay that we've seen in the past, isn't the same guy that got 8 interceptions a few years ago, isn't the same shutdown guy. And, I think that could also have part of it being he held out. He wasn't with the team for the entire offseason. And, he just wasn't there to really bond and grow with his teammates, and they didn't necessarily have that chemistry. Now, this year, fortunately for the Lions, they do not have that kind of controversy. They don't have anything going on that could negatively affect the team, unlike the other teams in the NFL. Now, the Green Bay Packers obviously traded up in this past draft to take Jordan Love, the future, hopefully for the Packers, their future successor for Aaron Rodgers. And I think that drafting a quarterback as high as they did and trading up to do so is going to really cause a rift between Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur, just kind of as it happened with Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy a few years ago when things weren't really working well for them. Aaron Rodgers got upset, and Aaron Rodgers pretty much has the final say there as the franchise quarterback, the guy that's been there, that's won a Super Bowl, has taken them to so many NFC championships. He really has the final say since there is no general manager, and it's just he kind of runs that team. It kind of works the way he wants it to, and I think that them drafting a quarterback is really going to put a rift between the coach and the quarterback. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is going to start for the Green Bay Packers next year. He is going to be their starting quarterback for at least next year, if not the next few years. And it might not affect them immediately. However, if that rift does even start to form this year, it's only going to get worse and worse as Aaron Rodgers gets older. His play starts to decline even more than it already is, and the fans might start to push for Jordan Love to come in if the Packers aren't having a good season, and that could really just open the gap so much and really cause a falling out between the Packers and Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. Moving over to the Chicago Bears, they obviously traded for a quarterback in Nick Foles this past offseason. They gave away a 4th-round pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars to acquire Nick. And he, I believe, is going to be the starting quarterback. Obviously, it is still technically a competition between Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky. Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky. However, if it is a true competition, as some people in the Bears organization are saying, I don't see a way that Mitchell Trubisky beats out Nick Foles. I by no means think that Nick Foles is an elite quarterback. I still think even if no matter who is starting for the Bears, no matter that be Mitch Trubisky or Nick Foles, I still think that they're going to have the worst starting quarterback in the North next season. And that's not to say Nick Foles is a bad quarterback either. It's just that we have a lot of talent in the NFC North as far as quarterbacks go. We have Aaron Rodgers, who's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame. We have Matthew Stafford, who could make a very compelling case for the Hall of Fame. We have Kirk Cousins, who is, in my opinion, the 3rd quarterback in our division, who is still a very efficient, very good, very smart quarterback. And Nick Foles is okay. Obviously, has won a Super Bowl MVP. However, I just don't think he is quite at the level of that. But I think that quarterback controversy is going to, if Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles are both getting reps with the 1, they're not the rest of the offense, starting offense and defense aren't going to get to mesh with their starting quarterback as well as if, Nick Foles were to get 100% of the first team snaps the whole offseason, they could develop that chemistry. And I think if it is a true competition and they're splitting time with the 1s, I think that that's going to hurt their chemistry, and especially in the early weeks, especially when we play the Bears in week 1, that could really hurt them. And then obviously getting into the big news of the Minnesota Vikings, Dalvin Cook has decided to hold out. He will no longer take part in training camp or offseason programs or meetings or film sessions or anything related to the Minnesota Vikings organization. He will not take part in until he, in his words, gets a reasonable extension, which could mean anything. Smart on his part because he didn't put out a defined number, so he put himself in a good situation to negotiate up and down to get exactly what he wants and maybe even a little bit more than the team thinks he deserves. But obviously, this is going to hurt the Minnesota Vikings. Now, the Minnesota Vikings are a very run-first team, as last season they only threw the ball 466 times and they ran the ball 476, so they ran the ball more than they passed it. Dalvin Cook is really the engine to that team. Last year in 2019, he only played in 14 games. However, he had 250 carries for 1,135 yards, 13 touchdowns, while also having 53 receptions for 519 yards. So he is a very good running back. I would argue top 10 in the league. He's so explosive. He's so shifty, so elusive. His only real problem is that he has not been able to stay on the field for a full season, in his NFL career. Dating back to his rookie season when he tore his ACL, and all the way through to this past season, he has not been able to play in every single game. Is that important? Obviously, you want your running back to be there, but if in only 14 games he can give you 250 carries for over 1,100 yards and 13 touchdowns, I still think that's a good guy or a good player to have. I still think that there's a lot of value in that. And, let's look at how the Minnesota Vikings fared without Dalvin Cook in the last 2 regular season games. The first game was against the Green Bay Packers, where they lost 10-23, so they only were able to score 10 points. And Minnesota Vikings only rushed the ball 16 times for 57 yards. Now, the second game that he missed was against the Chicago Bears. They also lost the game 19-21. So a much closer game, but they still were not quite able to win without Dalvin Cook. And in that game, they had a very good rushing attack, 26 rushing attempts for 174 yards and a touchdown. However, they did lose a fumble also. So the Minnesota Vikings showed that they can produce without Dalvin Cook, but they have not shown, at least that last season, that they can win without Dalvin Cook. He is the engine, as I mentioned. He runs that offense. He is the main guy there. And looking at other running backs that have held out in recent years, Ezekiel Elliott got his money because he is the engine to that Dallas Cowboys team. Without Zeke, that Dallas Cowboys offense really was not the same. Melvin Gordon held out and eventually came back because the team was doing good without him. Why the Chargers were more of a run-first team, they found Austin Eckler, and really they ended up paying him over Melvin Gordon because Melvin Gordon decided to sit out, and Melvin Gordon is no longer even he's no longer a member of the LA Chargers who he sat out for last season. And then obviously the big one in Le'Veon Bell, he sat out. He wasn't really the engine of the offense, but he was still a very good player, somebody that the Steelers relied on, and they, didn't pay him. They found a James Conner, and he's no longer on the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's now a member of the New York Jets, and he's really not the same player that he was in Pittsburgh. So just looking at, recent history, more often than not, running backs that sit out don't get the contract that they're hoping for, and in most cases they actually get replaced, and I think that could definitely happen in Minnesota. Obviously they have Amir Abdullah. I can't remember all the Minnesota Vikings names off the top of my head, but they have a lot of really solid backup running backs that I think could take over that role and really, maybe not be quite what Dalvin is, but I think that they can definitely be a reliable running back in the NFL. And if one of those players gets really hot during the season and has a couple breakout games, I definitely think Dalvin Cook might not even be a Viking next year, because the Vikings could prove we can win without you, we can rush the ball without you, as they showed in Week 17. They had 174 rushing yards without Dalvin Cook. They showed that they can do it. So if Dalvin sits out for too long, it might actually hurt him in the long run as far as his career with the Vikings, because they might see that they don't actually need him anymore. They don't have to pay him. They can pay a different position. They can pay different running backs a lot less than they would have to pay Dalvin Cook, and he might not even play for the Vikings next season. He might not even be on the team come next offseason. Now, obviously, that is a big if. That might not even happen. For all we know, Dalvin Cook and the Vikings could get an extension by week 1, and everything would be fine. We play the Vikings late in the season anyway. Our first game is in week 9. So if Dalvin Cook does end up holding out for the season, obviously, even if he holds out to week 5, he won't be quite as great as he would be if he were practicing the whole offseason. He won't quite be in the same shape, won't quite be the same player. However, if he sits out the whole season, we won't have to play him at all. The Vikings are going to be much less competitive, and, really, they're just not going to be the same offense without Dalvin. So, those are kind of the 3 controversies around the NFC North right now. The Detroit Lions don't really have one as far as I'm aware. Nothing big that's broken the news or, even is really being talked about a whole lot. And I think that that's good for the Lions. I think staying off the radar, really focusing on themselves, bettering the team as a whole for the next season, and really staying out of the spotlight, not, Matt Patricia is probably going to use that as fuel. They're not giving us respect. We don't have any primetime games. We're not featured on the news. We're not worth talking about. He's going to use that as fuel for the Detroit Lions roster to, encourage them to be better, to push them to get better every single week and win football games. Because the more you win football games, the more you get talked about, the more recognition that you are going to get. But with that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. I thought it was a fun idea to kind of look at what was going on in the rest of the NFC and kind of see where they were at as far as a franchise, as far as an organization, and just kind of see what problems they were going through that might actually benefit the Lions in the long run. And those were the 3 that I found. So if I missed anything, obviously let me know in the comments below. If there is something on the Lions that you are worried about, as far as maybe, a contract dispute, or if, you're worried that somebody might hold out, obviously put that in the comments below. But until then, that is all I have for you guys today. If there is Lions news before tomorrow, I will obviously make a video letting everybody know. But until then, that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you all tomorrow.